All right, so up next is Professor Hod Lipson's team. So Professor Lipson, unfortunately, could not make it today. He's actually abroad. I'm going to introduce him anyways. So Hod Lipson is a professor of mechanical engineering and data science at Columbia and the co-author of an award-winning book called Fabricated, The New World of 3D Printing, and Driverless, Intelligent Cars and the Road Ahead. Hod Lipson's work is on self-aware and self-replicating robots that basically pushes or challenges the view of how we think about robots today. To present on behalf of Hod is his team, Chad Deschamps and Philip Weider, as well as Jonathan Bludinger and Aslan Miriev. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chad Deschamps. I'm a second-year PhD student in the computer science department. And first, let me say that Hod is very sorry he couldn't be here. So I apologize for my inferior presentation of our work. So in about 40 years, world population will grow by about 3 billion to 10 billion people. So how are we going to feed all those people? Well, a first step would be to lose less of our crops to disease. And so we're working with plant biologists who are breeding the next generation of disease-resistant crops. Specifically, our collaborators are breeding corn to be resistant to northern leaf blight. Northern leaf blight is a fungus that kills the leaves of corn plants. And when the leaves are dead, it can't photosynthesize, and so it can't get the energy to feed the growing corn kernels that we want to eat. So these plant biologists have huge fields of tens of thousands of plants, and they have to keep track of which plants in their experiments get the disease and which don't. And they're not the only ones who have to keep track of this. Farmers in the US and Canada lose an estimated $2 billion a year just from NLB, from northern leaf blight in corn. So if farmers could accurately and quickly detect this disease, they could stop it from spreading in their fields. So we applied a machine learning technique called deep learning to the images that were taken in the field in natural conditions to detect disease. And how does deep learning work? We have a few more hours left in the symposium, right? So deep learning is deep because it applies the processing on images in a series of stages that build on what was in the previous stages. So imagine you came home from IKEA with some furniture and you opened up the instruction manual and there was one page and one step and you had to do everything all at once. I wouldn't want to sit in the chair that you built. But by breaking up a problem into a series of smaller, more manageable steps, you're able to do things that are more complex and do them more accurately. So that's what the deep is. What is learning? Learning, it comes from the fact that we don't tell the system how to break up the problem into these steps, and we don't tell it what to do in each step. So if you've heard of deep learning, so here, just as an example, you input an image on the left, and it looks first at the lower level features like lines, and then it slowly builds them up into higher level features, here noses and eyes, and then finally looks at the full image. So if you've heard of deep learning, you've probably heard that it's magic and can do anything. So why is this even a challenge? So first of all, it's a challenge because even to some experts, it can be difficult to discern what is this northern leaf blight and what is not. So there's some inter-rater variability, it's called, between different experts saying whether something is actually a disease. Here, for example, is the disease, and here is just naturally dying leaf. And if I showed you another image of one of them, would you be confident that you could tell them apart? I wouldn't be confident. So how did we do the training? We got our plant biologists to annotate thousands of images and say where on each image the disease was. Then we broke the images into many small boxes, and we trained a deep learning system to say for each box, how likely is it that this box contains disease? So then we assembled all of these results into heat maps, 3 heat maps per image, each heat map generated in a slightly different way. And the white indicates where the system thinks the lesions are in the image. Here are some more examples. On the top are 2 images plus their heat maps that have disease, and on the bottom are two images without disease. And that may not be immediately obvious. And so you might think, what's going on here? Why are there so many white dots in the images, in the heat maps for images that don't have disease? So that's because the task is complicated for the reason I mentioned, and also because the machines basically don't have common sense. And so these are some example images that tripped up the system. And some of them kind of make sense, and you might think, okay, I could get that wrong too if I weren't a plant biologist. But some of them, like the fly, you think, well, obviously a fly is not a crop disease. But that's because you have years of experience, you've been in the world, you know what a fly is. The machine was probably not trained on flies, it doesn't know what flies are. So basically, we couldn't completely make sense of the heat maps. So did we fail? No. We took the heat maps for each image, we fed them into a second deep learning system that we trained to output a final verdict on whether there was disease in the image, and that deep learning system was able to learn which of the white dots was actually disease and which was not. And so in recently published work, we were able to achieve 97% accuracy on images that the system had never seen before. And in ongoing work, we're actually finding that this system can be more accurate than even people with PhDs in biology, and that's largely because the computers don't get tired and they don't get bored, so they don't miss things. Thank you.